So starting with book 3, Sutra 44. By samyaya on the thought waves unidentified by and external to the body, Maya Vidya, or the great bodilessness, the veil over the light of the self is destroyed. And I'll see if Carrera says anything. The veil, avarana, is the same word used by Sri Patanjali in Sutra 252. As its result of the practice of pranayama, the veil over the inner light is destroyed. This siddhi is a further attainment derived from samyaya on the relationship between the body and space, akasha, when the individual experiences the physical borders of the body beginning to blend or expand to the infinite ether around it. The ego sense begins to experience itself as unfeathered to a particular place. Our identification with the body and mind is so ingrained that breaking it is no easy task. As long as this identification exists, we feel that our thoughts are generated from our body-mind, and therefore location of our awareness is limited to wherever our body resides. But samyaya on ether, we come to experience the mind as omnipresent and understand that it exists and functions outside the body as well as within. This is the great bodilessness referred to in this sutra. You know, I don't know if this is related to this or not, but I've had this thought all week, and like I can feel my Dharma talk forming for Sunday's class about. And Sue, you touched on it yesterday when you told Amanda her daughter was very grounding. And I thought that was so beautiful. And I think that's why Amanda has called her daughter Isvara in a previous sutra lesson. And I also thought that that was so beautiful. And I think that having that type of tool is like so helpful to get us through these type of times. And like, that's how my Kramer is. Like, he is like my, if I need a break, like I can take him for a walk, or I can sit and pet him for a second. And this week has been really testing me. I found out something, and I normally would have reacted very differently and spent a lot of energy on it. But instead, I immediately moved this person to that wicked part of the 4 keys. And it's not my job to judge or do anything to this situation. I don't have enough facts, and I don't think I'll ever have all the facts. So for right now, this is where this person goes. But the fact that I did that and did not spend days analyzing and using all my energy on this, and then just like with all of like, and then I had to have another tough conversation this week with something else. And also speak up to somebody at work. And this was all on the same day.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, but I did it, but I keep having this like idea of like floating away and like thinking about like being in the beach, like, and how quickly you could just get like swept out there. Like if you're on a boogie board or a surfboard, or like I watched those like kite flyers, and I'm like, if the wind could just sweep them, they could be like halfway across the ocean. That kite thing is like hard work, it looks like.
Yeah.
But this idea of like being tethered to the beach, I would have so much less fear in the ocean if I knew I was tethered to the beach. Like I would go on my boogie board a lot further out because I know I could get back. But I only let myself go so far. And I'm trying to do this less in life where I'm trying to feel more grounded. And I think the sadhana practice is doing it for me every morning, that I can get through my day. And I'm not talking about like attachment. I'm just talking about like feeling grounded and like not like literally attaching yourself to something, but this idea of knowing how to like self-care and go ground yourself so that you can do these things, but then come back to it and then go do the next thing and then come back to it. And this, what he was just talking about here, and I guess all this like ether space, I feel like that's what's happening with all of everything's going on right now. Like we feel like we're just like so lost and floating out there, and we have to like come back and be like, what like you just have to ask yourself what's going to ground you, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And like think like this veil over, like I was making up stories all week, and I'm like, just say what you have to say. Like, don't analyze the situation. Just write down what you want to say and say it. And I did, and it's everything turned out fine. And if it wasn't fine, then it wasn't meant to be fine.
Right, but you need to say what you need to say. I'm not good at that, but I'm working on it.
Yeah. But like that to me is so much growth. Like when I say that I'm working on it, even if I can't do it yet, it's just like practicing a yoga shape. Like even if you can't do it and you're working on it, that is enough. Like I think that's enough. And I did this with learning to say the word no, like in my early 30s. Like my 20s, I went through saying yes to everything and I was fine with it. But in my early 30s, I was learning to say the word no, and it was really hard. The answer is no. No, not I have to stay home and do laundry, not I don't, whatever, yoga, whatever. No, I don't want to do it, period. And once I started getting in the habit, I probably picked it up within a week. I was saying no to everything. And then finally people just stopped inviting me. And I was like, thank God, I don't want to do those things anymore.
Right, yeah. I remember many years ago, I learned a lesson that's somewhat similar. And that was, if you do something wrong, if you mess up, apologize right away, apologize directly, say exactly what you're sorry for, don't explain anything. Just say, I messed up, I'm really sorry I did that. And I learned it as an administrator, and I learned it the hard way. And the hard way was, you can tell yourself all sorts of stories, and all of a sudden, and you alluded to this, Pam, you've got all these fantasies about what's going to happen, you know, and so on, and they're always much worse than just stepping up and going up to the person, and if necessary, you do it in front of other people, and just fessing up and say, I was wrong, I'm really sorry. I did this, I shouldn't have done this, this is what I should have done, and following up if you need to follow up, etc. But I learned it as an administrator, and it is carried through in my marriage pretty much, although there have been times, you know, and with my kids, you know, and it's made a very big difference in my life, and it's much less painful.
I totally agree.
You don't form the ulcer, you know.
I immediately after one of my meetings, I had said something and that I regretted, and I just was like, I could just let it go, but I did. I sent them an email and I apologized, and I didn't hear back from them, but it doesn't matter. I put it out there, and I don't think they're holding it against me. I just don't even think it warranted a response, and I'm okay with that. I'm not dwelling over it. And I think that,
or somebody might need 24 hours. You just never know, but you're right. You know, you put it out
but
there.
I think that's part of it. Like if you apologize, don't feel like just because you apologize, you immediately have to get a reaction for it. Like your job would be to just apologize. You don't have to wait for the response. Like if someone may not agree with, like, especially if you really piss someone off, like they don't, just because you, my sisters always did this to me. I'm like, just because you apologize to me doesn't mean I don't have to be mad for, you know, like give me a minute,
right.
You know? But I think this whole idea of this grounding, where I was getting at, is that if I had that rope tethered to the beach, and I'd be less fearful going out into the ocean.
Yes.
So the more I ground myself here and build my tethers, like think about like mountain pose and like really rooting your feet down, like building that strength. The more I physically do that kind of work, the less fearful the other things are. Talking up when I need to, and apologizing when I need to, and self-care when I need to, and whatever else when I need to. Maybe sleep better. I don't know.
Yeah.
But with Jackie, like my point being is like once you do it one time and then you do it the second time, it just gets a little bit easier. So like this
Right.
is what I'm hoping for. And like I told the people that I had to speak up to, I'm like, this is really hard for me. I could feel the tears forming, and it wasn't that, it was just like it was really hard.
Mhm.
And but they like people they listened.
Mhm.
And now I'm like, you know what, it was hard. And do I want to do it again? Not necessarily, but would I? Yep. Like I got through it, and I would absolutely certainly do it again if it was the right thing to do, you know?
Mhm.
Yep.
But this whole idea of like that veil over the light, like so like this, I can hear this, my brain just like all week making these stories and driving myself crazy. I'm like, stop. And that to me is the grounding part of it. Like get out of my head and just ground myself, do the task and move on. Whereas like that this week, I'm so proud of myself because normally I'm not like that. Like normally I would still be stewing over something else and doing that and this, but like I was able to like move on and like hang out with Kramer more and like not take it out on Eric, because that's what starts happening, right? You start taking it out on other people and then your whole life just gets messy.
Mhm.
So I can see like where they're going somewhere like with this type of thing. It's just like way out there. It's like way out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I see it too. I'm thinking last night I was having a conversation with Shay, my husband, because of all this talk with how schools are going to go back, you know, and Blasio's made his things, and unfortunately DeVos put in her 2 cents this week too, and I was talking about that. And my husband said to me, and it was, he grounds me, which is interesting. So we balance each other, and he grounds me. When I start to fly away, you know, in my thoughts and my actions, he brings me back, he grounds me. And he said, now just as if they are beginning to have conversations with you guys in your district, he said, you need to stand up for yourself. And I didn't say, I'm just listening to him. He says, because you know that you've been trodden on, because you just accept things and you do things because it's the right thing for the kids. He says, but in this instance, when we're going back, you have to think about yourself and your own safety just as much as you're thinking about the kids. Mm-hmm. He says, and don't get stood upon with the other people. He says, if they're giving teachers a voice or an option, you know, a way to opt in or out of things, he says, then you need to stand up for yourself. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But he's right. And I have been doing that much more in recent years at school. But still, it's a challenge, because there's always that you do what's right for the kids, and if that means I get trodden on in the meantime, I've always accepted that. But he's right. It shouldn't have to be one or the other. There should be a way to have a balance there. So I'm not exactly sure what that's going to mean moving forward for school, but it's good for me to keep it in my head that, you know, I have rights too.
yes.
And I need to keep that in mind.
This whole thing with the schools bothers me so much, because I think there are excellent pieces written by teachers in terms of their own safety and how the hell will this ever work. And then there are excellent pieces written by parents about, I can't continue to do the schooling at home, different than homeschooling. I can't continue to do the schooling at home and then doing my work until 2 a.m. and then getting up and starting all over again. I can't do it. And the reality in America is, our socioeconomic reality is that teachers aren't babysitters, but we do use schools as places for kids to be from 8 to 3, 8 to 4.
Absolutely.
And that is the reality, and it must be addressed. And if we had adequate leadership at the top, and I won't go into it, there are ways to do this. You don't need to just have kids in schoolhouses to have school and appropriate care for those 6 or 7 or 8 hours a day. You do not. You can put them in other places that don't require certified staff, as long as they are capable staff. You could have kids working with certified teachers 2 days a week if that's all you got space for. And in these other places, they're doing things that are aligned with education, but that don't require a certified teacher in the room, nor do they require a certified building. And but it requires flexibility. It requires some creative thinking. It requires pulling in all of the stakeholders and not just the people at the top, and money. So the money that's going to save Boeing, stop it already. Put it in, if we consider education so important, it's so important for kids to go back to school, then put your money where your effing mouth is. I am so furious about this.
I know, me too.
Put me in charge.
Yes, please.
Or at least put me somewhere there,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so furious about this. There are so many good ideas out there and so much energy. I want FDR back. What he did for the country then could be done now. We could put more people back to work. We could get kids back to school. We could keep teachers, kids, and families safe. If only there was vision, flexibility, and the willingness to spend the bucks on this, we could do this. And as it is now, we've got people like you, Jackie, between a rock and a hard place, being forced in positions that you don't ever want to have to take, but you're going to have to take it because your husband's right. You got to protect yourself. We've got people like my friends with school-age kids who are dying and who I don't know how they're going to get through another 6 months of this if a vaccine is discovered that quickly. And they'll probably find something, but it's not going to be effective that quickly, and it's not going to open up the doors. So I'm done. I'm sorry.
Yep. Yeah.
This is the kind of thing, Pam, where I think it is okay to step up there and get into all of the spaghetti things that are flying around out there and try to pull out a few strands and straighten it out. This is where I feel like, you do it with focus, you do it with energy, and you separate out your craziness from whatever else is going on and you just attack. This is where I think, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So my teacher, Joshua Green, sent out this email. It was a couple weeks ago. I just read it 2 days ago. And it's about spiritual anger. And he's like, you're probably not going to think that I'm going to say what I'm going to say, but according to the yoga texts, you're supposed to get angry in the face of wrongdoing and just, right? That's what the Bhagavad Gita is. And in some cases, you have to kill people and be violent. Like, it's so bad that, like, there's such injustice that, like, you have to go to war. Like, that's what... There's all this diplomacy, and like the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita is one little slice, one little chapter where they're finally at war because nothing else worked. Mm-hmm. And what he said, which like totally applies to what you said earlier about the Rumi quote, Pam, like it starts with anger and the anger fuels the action, but the anger has to melt into love. That's like the important thing. If it doesn't melt into love. Did I talk about this yesterday? In our discussion? I don't know who I'm talking to.
I agree. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, but like that's the idea. Like if the anger doesn't melt into love, then you're not bringing yoga into it. Like Ram Dass talked about this before he passed away when the whole women's march was going on. He said we have to love the people we're protesting against as much as we love ourselves. But it doesn't stop the protesting,
Yes, yeah.
So like this whole idea of like Rumi's talking about this field beyond wrong and right. I think he's talking about spirit. It's like when you get, even what you said earlier, Pam, about being anchored, when you get closer and closer to spirit, you get less scared. There's less fear and there's more drive because you're kind of like aware that there's this underlyingness to everything. So it's like beyond the wrongdoings and the right doings, there's something deeper. And when you can pivot into that, that's when you get the love. Like you can, that's like the extreme example. Like you can kill someone and love them by seeing the spirit underlying underneath. It's like a really heavy idea. And I'm not saying you need to be killing anybody at school. That's not what I'm saying, but I hope you get my point. that,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes this is insane. This is
Yeah.
absolutely insane. You
Yes,
have to
it is.
stand up for yourself. Like, these kids
Yeah.
are going to die. You know, they
Yeah.
talk, oh, it's just a small percentage. Like, that's going to be thousands of kids dying. Are you crazy?
We need to stop talking about people as numbers.
Right. It's like people, it's real children. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And there are adults in the school. The
Yes.
adults are having worse reactions. Like, it's insane. It's because they're making money. Davos makes money when the schools are open. You got to stand up for yourself.
I heard in London, I don't know if it's London or a suburb of London, but my friend's daughters and her granddaughter lives there, and their preschools are open. They're going back to school already.
Look
But
at
their
the
restaurants
numbers in Europe versus,
What?
I just posted a meme on Facebook. Look at the meme. The numbers in Europe of infected people versus the
Yeah.
numbers of people in America, that's the difference. Like, they handled the crisis correctly, and that's why they're reopening
I
now.
know,
Like,
but with people still traveling, and they're probably just getting the idea, like, oh, if they're doing it, we should do it, type of thing too. Like, it's got to be like a global decision, even if there's low numbers elsewhere, because
we didn't participate in the global decision. He
That's
decided
right.
that the states were going to do whatever they wanted, and that's why
So we had 3,000 cases yesterday, and London had like 400, or England had 480 or something like that.
their
So
restaurants
it's
aren't open, from what I understand. I don't know. I didn't research it, but like, maybe that makes sense. Well, fine, don't open everything else if you're going to open schools up. Like, pick one. Like,
right. What's the priority? The bars?
exactly. That's
Right.
what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
we can't have everything open and also have schools open. And I don't know.
It's crazy. I wouldn't send my kid back to school right now. I'm very worried about my sister being forced to go back to school to teach.
Yeah, and then she's not going to be able to see you, because do you really want to have a family member in a school
Right.
building
It's
all
like,
day and then come home and bring it to your family? I mean, we're logical humans. The people that are making decisions are greedy moneymakers.
they're
So,
crazy, right. It's not that they're not logical. They know exactly what they're doing.
oh, they know what they're doing. They're just
They're having these meetings not in person. You know what I mean? Like, the school administration are having these meetings about how they're going to reopen not in person, like on Zoom. Really? You're going to put the kids in that position? And you won't even do it yourself? It's like wild. It's every morning I wake up and I'm like, what shit show is going to happen today? It's like, I can't even think up. Right?
Mhm.
You know, there's a guy on Facebook who has a lot of followers now, and I started following him. And he has a daily Facebook blog called The Daily Shit Show. And then he sums up what crap went down that day very concisely, very clearly. But it's clear, it's, you know, as you said, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And the first one I read by him, I thought, I like this guy.
Daily Shit Show, I'm going to have to follow him.
Yeah.
I just want to read this one sentence, because in Carrera's book, he sort of summarizes, which I'm not going to do just because of time. I can do it on Monday. But he says, in response to the sutra I just read, in which we experience that consciousness was never bound to a particular place. And like what Amanda was just saying, like, I feel like I wasn't trying to contradict that, like with the grounding and the anchoring. I was just saying, like, that's where I am now. Like, I need to start with the, like, doing that. But then Amanda was saying, like, and it's like this idea of apologizing and learning to say no is like, eventually I don't need to keep planting it. It just will bring, and it's not like it always has to be Kramer. Because then if I'm out, I can't come running home to Kramer. I can find grounding when I'm out, type of thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'll find it. It says never bound to a particular place, but you can always have it with you. It could be the bottoms of your feet just planted on the floor, type of thing. I think that's where I was going with it. It's just like this idea of taking a deep breath before you have to do something hard, finding a way to like center yourself, and then doing the hard thing, and then coming right back to doing that grounding, centering thing. And that's where you can be the anger and the love at the same time.
Well, I always reference this Ganasvar, who I'm always like quoting in these talks. When I met him in person, I told him about my personal fear in meditation when I feel like my body, like I'm dying to my body and my identity. There's like this huge inner death happening. It's freaking horrifying. And I said, what do you do in the face of fear like that? And he said, eventually we all have to shed our bodies. He's like, you're sitting in meditation, you know, you're identifying with something different, and you're going to find for yourself that the safest place in the whole universe is Atman. Right? So the safest place in the whole universe is the center of self. And I feel like when these pundits are talking about like, where are you grounding? What is always present in you? Because you can get your foot cut off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what's always present is consciousness. So if you can tap back into that place, it's the safest place in the universe. So it means like you can say to your boss, you can meet bad situations, and like you're going to feel fearless because you're going to know there's a deeper part of you that's permanent. It's like that's why we get scared to stand up, I think, sometimes, because we have a fear of change, and we have a fear of what could possibly happen to our mortal bodies. And that's the duality of it all, right? It's like you can exist in love because you are consciousness, and you could also have anger because your physical body mind has to live in the world. So it can happen simultaneously, but I don't know.
I'm gonna say this, and it may not be things we want to hear, but like, and I don't want to put thoughts in your head, Jackie, but like thinking about, I said something to someone a little bit more senior than my boss, and she doesn't want to stir up any controversy and make sure I'm not rageful, that before I say, I'm like, I'm fine. I typed it out, and I do things professionally and respectfully. I've made it this far. But this whole idea of not standing up for myself does not sit well with me, and it's going to happen. And if someone fires me for it, first of all, it's not legal, so I will sue them. And second, right, that if I do get fired for whatever reason, under that, if he finds a different reason, but that, whatever, then you know what? I don't want to work for these people, and I will find something else. And we had this discussion with Ashley weeks ago, right? But this idea, Jackie, that you need to stand up for yourself as a teacher to protect those children. And yeah, like if it makes sense that you don't belong in the classroom anymore for your safety, then maybe you start looking at administration and start making the rules up, because somebody needs to start speaking on behalf of these children. And like, you would be more powerful there.
Oh, but I wouldn't want to be there.
No, and we don't always want, like, I'm sure Amanda doesn't want to be running a yoga studio during COVID, but that's what she was picked to do. So sorry, Amanda. You know, like sometimes we get devastated thinking, but it's really just the world. Like we know this, like it's just the world figuring out the place that you're supposed to be anyway, right? And I hope that doesn't happen to you, especially if it's not something you want. But
Jackie, administration is not always the dark side. I mean, seriously.
It should be. We just look at it that way because they.
No, but I love my daily contact with the kids. My work with the kids is my passion. So I wouldn't want to not do that. Before I went into teaching, I've only been teaching for 15 years. Before I went into teaching, I ran group homes, and so I was an administrator.
We should talk sometime, because I used to run group homes also. We should. We need to get together.
Yeah.
Sue, how much this isn't yoga related, but I'm curious. They're saying they're going to cut off federal funding to schools that don't open. On Long Island, how much federal funding really goes into the schools?
Really a slim proportion, and when I left, it was only about 6 or 7%.
So we can get on without it, right?
Well, it's problematic because schools are always struggling anyway, and you have state funding coupled with local tax-based funding. State funding is probably going to drop because of the drop in revenues for COVID-19. You can only push local funding so far. There's even a state law as to how far you could push it. So to lose another 6 or 7% means it means a great deal. It means certain discretionary programs are going to go. It means if I'm a superintendent, I'm looking for ways to push out the highly paid, highly skilled, highly experienced teachers so I can hire new teachers who are much more lowly paid, don't have tenure. I don't have to worry about certain things. It's not from any evil thing. It is. I need 5 fifth-grade teachers. I can only right now afford 4. How am I going to get number 5? You know, that kind of thing. So it's first, I don't think it's legal for him to do that. And I
Because federally.
even before he said this, the NEA and so on and so forth were lined up ready with lawsuits, and hiring hitmen to kill off DeVos. You know, I mean, it's gonna happen. So, and that cut in funding it'll be stayed in court. So it's gonna take a long time to happen. And I don't think it's
okay. So we don't have to open.
Well, I think you have to keep it in mind, and you also have to look at it's a diversionary tactic from other things he's doing and she's doing as well. That's what this is. Freak out everybody by telling them no federal funding. And only in one newspaper did I see a comment that, look, it's only 6 or 7%. Not great, it's bad, but it isn't disaster, you know. So.
I could see Cuomo getting so pissed that he just like cuts the taxes going out to them from New York State. We fund the rest of the United States, excluding California. Like I could see him just being like, all right, I'm keeping the money then. You're gonna take that? We're not gonna give it, you know? Like he's really, I mean, he was having a news conference at the same time and he was like not having it.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like he's really trying to protect us, which is a relief.
Well, I don't follow all of this, but like from what New York, New Jersey, Connecticut did, like they shut down, they got the numbers steady, and watching the like, because I follow North Carolina, and like looking at the rest of the states, like they at that time they were like, oh, we're fine because
and they could have just shut down. They would have never gotten it.
They never took it seriously, and now like it's all reverse, right?
Yeah. If you look at the graphs for all the different states, and New York is still steady, you know, and every other state is like this because they're a mess.
Not like they were like, it's not, you know, like the too big to fail type of situation where it's like it'll never happen to us. So I don't know. Like we have to be grateful for that. Hi Isabella.
Hi, Isa.
Oh my God, she's so cute.
Ooh, look at that smile.
Yeah.
She's got mommy. She's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be a nice rainy day at home, I guess, for you guys.
Well, you know, today is a great day to work out in the garden too, because you don't have the sun beating down on you and it's a little lower.
All right, well, it's already 8:21, but this is really good.
Yeah, thanks.
Do some breath work and meditate. What'd she say? Oh. Hi, Isabella. Aww. You are so cute.
Kisses. Wow, those are big kisses.
All right, so let's set up and we'll do a few rounds of alternate nostril breathing and I'll set the timer. Taking a few rounds through both nostrils, maybe 3. Deep inhales, long exhales. And then when you're ready, closing your right nostril with your thumb, your right thumb, inhaling through your left. Closing left nostril with right ring finger, exhaling right. Inhale right. Close. Exhale left. Doing a few more rounds on your own breath, exhaling through your left to finish. I've set the timer for 20 minutes. Finish up your breathing whenever you want, and if you need to set a separate timer, go ahead. Bringing your hands together in front of your heart. Namaste. Thank you guys. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Pam.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, have a
You
good
too.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye.